Welcome back to Monitors Unboxed. If you haven't been paying much attention to the monitor market lately, you might not have realized that in the last year or so, good quality 1440p gaming monitors have become exceptionally cheap. So cheap that in my opinion, they are beginning to replace 1080p monitors as the go-to entry-level choice for PC gamers. As we approach 2025, I think 1440p is the new 1080p. In the years prior to 2024, if you had less than $200 US to spend, you were pretty much consigned to a mid-refresh rate 1080p gaming monitor. Over the years, there's been plenty of these, such as the AOC 24G4, Gigabyte G24F, Pixio PX248, MSI G274F, and more, stretching all the way back to products like the AOC 24G2. In fact, back when I first reviewed the 24G2 in early 2020, it was one of the best and most affordable 1080p 144Hz IPS gaming monitors at $180 US. But back in 2020, if you wanted a 1440p gaming monitor, you were generally looking at paying at least $300 US for one of the better budget class monitors. At the time, I was recommending the ViewSonic VX2758 2KP MHD for $320 as a 1440p 144Hz IPS. High-end 1440p with things like the LG 27GL850 at $500. Fast forward to the later parts of 2024, and despite inflation, these monitor categories have shifted down an entire tier in pricing. Premium 1440p LCD monitors that used to occupy the $500 price range are now better and more like $300. Budget 1440p monitors that used to set you back $300 are now below $200. And 1080p 144Hz monitors that used to cost below $200 are now dirt cheap and fill out price points previously occupied by crappy 1080p 60Hz panels. This means that at price points we generally consider to be entry-level, gamers can now purchase a 1440p monitor straight off the bat and not have to touch 1080p at all. And no, purchasing a 1440p gaming monitor for less than $200 doesn't give you some rubbish piece of crap that delivers terrible performance. I've recently tested two monitors priced below $200 US that have genuinely impressed me with their performance and feature set, offering outstanding bang for buck and overall quality that's as good as more expensive alternatives. The best option is the Dell G2724D, which regularly fluctuates in price between $180 and $200 US. I described this as a steal in my review. The 27-inch 1440p 165Hz IPS panel used in the G2724D provides a decent motion experience with virtually no annoying artifacts like excessive ghosting or inverse ghosting. It's balanced out with a nice color experience, well-calibrated sRGB mode, decent factory tuning, high brightness, and great viewing angles. The contrast ratio isn't too bad either. It performs just as well as some of the monitors that at the time were much pricier, such as the MSI G274QPF-QD and Gigabyte M27QP. Dell managed to create a low-cost 1440p monitor without compromising the experience that is a great choice for entry-level shoppers. There's also the ASRock PG27QFT2A, which is usually available between $160 and $190, so a little cheaper than the Dell model. It's also a 27-inch IPS LCD, this time at 180Hz, and while response times aren't as fast as the Dell model, hence its lower price, it's still usable. It packs a great contrast ratio for an IPS LCD, decent brightness, good viewing angles, and the overall package is solid if basic. What I'm also seeing is a noticeable trend of some of the other models I've recommended over the years, slowly dropping down to that golden $200 price point. The MSI G274QPF-QD is a great display, and it's gone from $270 at the start of 2024 to just a little over $200 now. LG are offering one of their panels in the 27GL83A for as little as $200. The Gigabyte M27Q has fallen in price by $50 since the start of the year, and there's a couple of other sub $200 options available that I'm yet to test, like the MSI MAG275QF. I suspect that many of these will be hot items and really smash that $200 barrier to pieces during the holiday sales period because competitors are already sitting below that price point right now. I think it's crucial to be aware of this if you're planning on buying a new gaming monitor because it's very easy to miss the value on offer in the 1440p range. If you think that 1080p is the only choice, you may end up spending too much on a 1080p monitor. For example, right now the AOC 24G4 is priced at $180 US, the same typical price as the G2724D or PG27QFT2A that offer 1440p instead. The Gigabyte G24F2, a monitor I wasn't overly impressed with, is $160 US, and I'd strongly recommend spending just $20 to $30 more to get a 1440p monitor instead. And this is not even mentioning the many 1080p options available for more than $200. Now, to be fair, the cheapest 1080p gaming monitors today are priced more like $110 to $130. Things like the Pixio PX248 Prime, HP Omen 24, MSI G series, there's a bunch of those. These are all fair and sensible prices for a 1080p monitor in 2024, given where 1440p is currently sitting. These products have replaced the old 1080p 75Hz IPS models that used to dominate the near $100 market, which is about as cheap as you can get without getting into the ridiculous and poor value zone. But as a reminder, be aware of what's a reasonable price for the specifications you are shopping for in 2024. About $120 to $140 is fine for a 1080p monitor, but as you start to approach the $160 and $180 ranges, this is where changing gears to focus on 1440p makes a lot more sense. So if you're an entry-level shopper, why should you choose a 1440p monitor and not even bother with 1080p? Haven't I just shown that 1080p is still the cheapest option on the market? Yeah, that's true. If you want the absolute cheapest option you can get, 1080p is still there, still alive and kicking for those on extreme budgets. But in the same way that buying a 1080p 144Hz monitor was a much better choice than a 1080p 75Hz monitor in 2020, I think a 1440p 144Hz monitor is a much better choice than a 1080p 144Hz monitor in 2024. There's multiple reasons for why 1440p is a substantial upgrade. The most obvious one is pixel density, which directly relates to image quality. In a standard 27-inch panel size, 1440p delivers 109 pixels per inch, compared to 82 ppi for a 1080p screen. That's a 33% increase in density, which leads to a clearer, sharper image. Better text that's easier and nicer to read, not as blurry across the panel, it's a huge difference. In fact, a 1440p monitor at 27 inches is still delivering 18% better pixel density than a 1080p 24-inch screen. So if you're considering a smaller 1080p panel that's better suited to the resolution, 1440p at 27 inches is better again. You only get parity in pixel density when comparing a 32-inch 1440p screen with a 24-inch 1080p screen. In most other cases, the comparison is very favorable to 1440p, and this makes 1440p more usable on larger screen sizes. Even at just 27 inches, 1080p screens have a bit of the you can see the pixels effect. With a larger resolution comes more screen real estate. 1440p at 100% scaling in Windows allows you to fit in more windowed applications than 1080p at 100% scaling. It opens up more split screen or side-by-side app configurations that are actually usable. It allows you to do more and utilize smaller text sizes without things becoming unusably blurry. This has big benefits in a lot of productivity use cases or even things like web browsing. So if you're thinking about buying a monitor for more than just gaming, the higher resolution is of big benefit. I'd personally find it very difficult to use a 1080p monitor for my workflow these days. That's how accustomed I am to the benefits of a higher resolution. For gaming, there's a lot of benefits from running at 1440p as well. The usual go-to concern with the upgrade from 1080p to 1440p is the performance cost. 1440p is harder to run than 1080p, and yeah, that's still true. But an equally significant factor in a lot of modern games is the image quality you get at lower resolutions, especially in an era dominated by upscaling, with many gamers playing games at sub-native resolutions through DLSS, FSR, or XeSS. 1440p monitors will deliver substantially better image quality that goes beyond the benefits of a sharper, higher resolution. This is because all upscalers work better at higher resolutions. The overall image quality from, say, DLSS quality mode is much better at 1440p compared to 1080p. At 1440p, the output is closer to the native non-upscaled image than it is at 1080p. This is because the render resolution is higher and it's feeding in higher resolution frames to its algorithm, increasing overall image quality. Using upscalers at lower output resolutions like 1080p leads to a blurrier presentation and more visual artifacts than you'd typically get at 1440p, and there's fewer instances at 1080p where DLSS can produce an image that's equivalent to or better than native. The simple reality is that these upscalers haven't really been designed with 1080p in mind. Most of the time, they are optimized for 4K. So the closer you can get to that resolution, the better an upscaler will perform. I guess there's a whole discussion to be had here about how the visual quality of 1080p gaming has eroded over time due to things like upscalers, but I can't see this going away anytime soon, which is why it's becoming harder to recommend 1080p these days. And again, this upscaling quality difference is in addition to the pixel density benefits of a higher resolution. All games, even those without upscaling, look better at 1440p. And the benefit isn't always restricted to single player games. It can be easier to spot enemies and react when you've got more pixel information on screen. Some pros and competitive gamers still prefer 1080p, especially because of the screen sizes that you can get for 1080p monitors. Generally, they prefer something a bit smaller, but I've heard from others that swear higher resolutions are better. The other factor that makes 1440p a great choice in 2024 is that modern graphics cards are moving more and more towards higher resolutions as their baseline capabilities. We're no longer in a world where mainstream models struggle to render at 1080p 60fps. Both the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4060 and AMD Radeon RX 7600 rendered just over 60fps on average in our 15-game review sample using ultra settings, and that's at native 1440p. If you factor in upscaling, that average improves substantially. Yes, these GPUs will deliver a higher frame rate at 1080p, but I think the overall experience at 1440p is highly playable, and the benefits to doing so are easily justified. There's all sorts of layers that can be applied to this as well. With upscaling at 1440p, you should be able to match the performance you were getting at 1080p, but with higher output image quality. This is because at 1080p, the best image quality will be closer to native rendering, but at 1440p, you can achieve similar results from using upscaling on the quality mode. There's a lot more flexibility these days in how you configure a game to look and run, which makes jumps in display resolution a lot less painless. All of this is to say that, in my opinion, 1440p is now the mainstream choice for gamers, as 1080p once was. It's no longer a premium or mid-range sort of feature that's inaccessible to budget buyers. 1440p monitors these days are cheap, high quality, and are what I'd recommend below $200 US. Graphics cards and even games themselves are moving towards 1440p as the baseline for image quality and performance. Video content is now widely available at resolutions above 1080p, and there is no doubting that desktop apps are better suited to higher resolutions. There's still a place for 1080p in the market, but it's becoming increasingly low-end, occupying the position that 1080p 60Hz and even 720p monitors held before it. And honestly, this is great news for gamers because, unlike a lot of other components, hint hint graphics cards, monitors have become noticeably cheaper over time, and the entry point to a decent display is getting lower and lower. There is so much competition, so many great buys, it's really a great time in the monitor space right now. Anyway, that's it for this video. Just a look at what I've been seeing in the monitor market over the last year or so. I think 1440p is getting so cheap that it's hard to ignore for most gamers, and I think over time, it might not be too far away that 1080p really is going to be relegated to a small section of buyers. I think most people today are probably going to be tossing up, especially in that sub $200 market, between the two, but I suspect that once we see 1440p down at near $150, and honestly we're not that far away from that right now, we're going to be seeing just so many more budget buys shift directly to 1440p, and I think that's coming very, very soon. So yeah, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. If you want to support Monitors Unboxed directly, then please do check out the other videos on our channel. We've got plenty of monitor reviews if you are considering buying a budget monitor, so check those out. You can also support us directly via our Patreon page, which is available via the links in the description below. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.